everyone. This is Dr. Gail Carson, your host for Women in Business, a show that celebrates women and their accomplishments as entrepreneurs or senior managers. As a woman business owner for over 5 decades, I take great pride in bringing these interviews to you. I'm also president of the SOB clubs, so if any of you are interested in getting one on your own or going to one, please just email me at Gail Carson, Gayle 13 @gmail.com. Well, we have a wonderful show for you today. My guest is Kaya Bromley. She uses humor and is refreshingly an interactive style to really simplify the Affordable Care Act so that associations, corporations, and both large and small employers can walk away with a basic understanding of the law and how it affects their businesses. She's advised hundreds of organizations on how to approach the ACA strategically so that they can properly comply with the law and can find hidden opportunities such as the ability to create profit centers. Welcome, Kaya. How are you today?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. But you know, you've got such an interesting background. You started your career by earning a master's degree in social work, and I'm well familiar with that because my sister taught that in university. But then you attended law school. So how, and I almost have to ask why, did you make the transition from social worker to lawyer to healthcare expert?
Well, I started in social work and was immediately very frustrated with the lack of resources and how difficult it was to get anything done. And I remember the first day of my master's program, one of the professors said, how many of you in this class hope to make money in your life? And everyone raised their hands, and she said, well, you're in the wrong profession then. And I raised my hand and I said, I'm going to be the first rich social worker then, because I think that's a bunch of crap to tell people that want to do good that they can't make money. And so I proceeded to go into organizational social work and was a lobbyist. And I worked for a congressman, and I did lobbying for children's issues and healthcare issues, actually, in Washington and in Lansing, because I was in Michigan. And I met a lot of lawyers, and I think I got really great mentors that were lawyers. And so I applied to law school and ended up getting a full ride, so decided to go.
Wow. Well, that's fantastic. I think if I had not gone to get my doctorate, I would have actually gone to law school. But after going through that, I didn't want to go through school again to become a lawyer. But, you said you're from Michigan, and that was where my husband was from. When your daughter was only 2, you were a first-year attorney, and you were with one of the largest law firms up in Michigan. But then you became a single mother. So how did you manage that change? Because I know there's a lot of people listening to this who think it's so hard to make changes when you've got a young child or young children, and yet you were also a single mom. So how did you do all of that?
So the first thing that I did is I stopped listening to everybody's advice. I had one of my mentors at the law firm that I was at told me that I was never going to get a job again if I quit that law firm. And I quit that law firm because my daughter was the first kid at daycare and the last kid picked up, and I felt horrible. I felt horrible that I wasn't doing enough at work, and I felt horrible that I was not there for her. And because she was with me all the time. She was only with her dad every other weekend. And so I stressed about that for about a week and then decided, no, I'm going to figure out my own way. And once I figured out my own way and I was driven by the end result instead of listening to other people about how to do it, I ended up creating a career for myself, making more money than I did at that law firm, by the way. But I was able to be at every one of my daughter's field trips. I was there to drop her off at school. There were some days that she did after school care, but it wasn't like before where I wasn't picking her up until 6 or 7 at night. And I created a career for myself. I was practicing law part-time. I started getting into real estate deals. I started reading books about how other people had created businesses and created streams of revenue, and I just started following the tips that I learned and did far better than if I had followed the advice of all the people who told me I couldn't do it. You
brought up a really, really good point, Kaya, and that is it's important to listen to others, and it's important to see what other people are doing, and it's important to get as much information from everywhere as you possibly can. But in the end, you have to follow your own heart. And that's exactly what you did, and you were successful at it. So I think that's fantastic. But you also moved around a lot during your first years. And you said you created a major professional challenge for you. So that's what you did when you made that first move. Is that correct?
Yeah, so it wasn't just the first move. After I made that first move, I worked at a second law firm that I thought was going to be easier hours, and it ended up being even worse. So I left a second law firm, went to a third law firm, and as first year, second year, third year lawyers, when you move around a lot, they think that you are, not a stable worker, and you're not going to stay around at their job. So I was basically unemployable, even though I graduated toward the top of my class in law school, and I had 11 offers out of law school. By my third year out, I could not have gotten a job in a law firm because they would have just seen my history of moving around. And it was because of divorce. We moved across the state. Lots of things happened. So what I did, it was out of necessity. There were some real estate developers who were using me as outside counsel. I used to work as outside counsel for Walmart developments. And at the end of one of the deals, they said, well, how about you come and work for us? And so when I was negotiating a salary with them and time, hours, I negotiated part-time. But I said, I'd like, instead of just a salary, I'd like to get a percentage ownership in these deals. And that's how I was able to start slowly working my way out of being dependent on working, getting paid for my time as opposed to creating streams of revenue.
Well, that's very, very smart, and I hope our listeners are paying attention to that, because there's a big argument about exchanging time for dollars, and that if you can price yourself for a project or price yourself on your value or price yourself in different manners, that's the real way to do it, so that you get out of that cycle of having to put in X number of hours to make X number of dollars. And you did it very creative, so that's fantastic. And I think, too, the expectation, I know I've done a lot of consulting work with law firms, and I know what they expect, especially out of their associates and their first year associates and second year associates. And I am finding that more and more young people who have graduated law school, as much as they wanted to work in a particular law firm, they're not so happy giving up their family time anymore. And so, you were kind of like a pioneer in this, so that's wonderful. But you also say that, of course, you didn't play by the rules. So tell us some other things that you did were a little bit different and not playing by the rules of what people would think for you.
So at one of the law firms that I was at, the second one, I had one of the managing partners come in and tell me that I had to wear nylons. And this just incensed me because I was making several $100,000 a year for this law firm, and they wanted to tell me what to wear on my legs. And this is at a time that it was the summer. Women wore suits without nylons. That's just what we do. And it was, it just incensed me so much. And I quit 3 days later. And that was when I went to, do this new thing with these developers. So the rules, sometimes those things are such a blessing for us as women and all of us in general, that we have to find the things that work for us. If I followed the rules with the nylons and gone to work every day just frustrated, I would be a completely different person. And that has shaped everything that I've done. I now work out of a home office and overlook Lake Tahoe, and I wear what I want to wear. I work when I want to work. I work way too much, probably because I've got, startups and I travel a lot, but I love it. I'm happy. I'm thrilled. So I don't like.
Well, that's the key. That's
yeah.
The key. You're happy. That's the key. And it's so funny because I was raised in an era where you had to wear nylons. I mean, that's just what you did. And I know when I first realized that women were not wearing hose, shall we say, and of course living in Florida and the humidity and the climate and everything, I thought, wow. And of course, then it became accepted. I think today, to see a woman with hose on or nylons or stockings, except for the leggings that people wear, they just, really, I think it's unusual to see a woman with nylons. However, I must say this. Taya, there are women that should wear nylons. Because their legs are not attractive. So if you have attractive legs, I'm going to go behind you and say, okay, go without the nylons. But some of the women, first of all, they shouldn't be wearing their skirts where they wear them because they don't have attractive legs. And I think that's my criteria more than what's proper. But let's ask you, now, what are the three most impactful things that motivated and inspired you on this journey? I mean, you've got to have had a lot of guts, because if you didn't, you wouldn't have done all of this. But what are the three things that impacted you most of all?
Well, the first thing was having my daughter. I wanted for her to have a life that she created, rather than being a victim of circumstances and life dictated for her. So once I had her and saw what I wanted for her, I really changed what I was doing in my own life. So that was something very impactful for me. Another thing that inspired me was my stepdaughter was killed in a house fire when she was 12 years old. And I shouldn't say inspired me, but was impactful to me. And again, for her, my daughter was 3 years old at the time my stepdaughter died. And it was something that moved me so much and makes me look at every single thing differently. Every day that I drop my daughter off for school now, I think this could be the last time so I appreciate every single second of every day. And I'm very aware of what's going on around me every single day. And I'm making the most of every minute, every single day, because Jessica only had 12 years, and it was just such a shocking experience to me that happened. The third thing that was very inspirational to me was I've had some amazing women that I've worked with over the years. And I know often women, will fight with other women or try to one-up other women. And I have had that experience of people doing it to me, but my experience with the women who we've had other's backs and created these friendships and bonds where we help each other up. I couldn't do this without my girlfriends. We talk all the time. We visit with each other, and they are the ones that give me, I'm often the only woman in the boardroom, very, very often. Yesterday I was at meetings in Vegas, only woman in the room. This is something that we deal with, and we need other women.
I totally agree with you, and I support what you're saying about some women treating other women poorly, and I think that just is something that men wouldn't do. So I absolutely support you in that. But I also support you in the factor of being very conscious of the present and what's going on around you, and really acknowledging all of the things that you are responsible to and responsible for. And it is so important for people to I have a little segment I do called Groundhog Day, and I say, do you get up every day and do the same thing the same way every day over and over and over again? If you are, it's a pretty boring life. So the fact that you are very conscious of what's going on around you and you're experiencing that is so important. But, you mentioned women supporting women. So what has been the biggest challenge you overcame as a woman in business, and what is it like being the only woman in a boardroom of men? Do they look at you differently? Do they respect what you say? I mean, you are an expert in your field. So tell us a little bit about that.
Now it's much different than when I was younger. When I was younger, it was very, very difficult. I had men outright sexually harass me. They would make comments about, what I looked like, what I was wearing. And I dressed very modestly. I was always in a business suit, but they